Are you interested in color theory, but you're really overwhelmed and it seems complicated, so you're not sure where to start? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you the 3 tips that you need to master color theory. There's only 3 tips, and if you follow these 3 tips, by the end of this video, I think you'll understand it a lot better and you'll become a master of color theory. First, you're going to grab a clean mixing tray. I'm using an old ceramic plate because it will kind of mimic a color wheel when we're mixing on it. And then pick your 3 primary colors. The traditional colors in a color wheel start with the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. This is totally fine, but you'll see why later. I don't actually use those colors. So the first tip I have for you is to actually use the brighter primary colors of cyan, magenta, and yellow. Those names don't actually translate well in watercolor, so the colors specifically that I use are lemon yellow, cerulean, and quin magenta for this brighter color theory. The reason that I use these bright primary colors is because they create brighter and clearer mixtures with less of the muddy, muted look. Also, when you mix magenta and yellow together, you get not only orange, but a beautiful red. So that's why I feel like this primary color theory is supreme for watercolor, because of the way that it mixes colors, the brightness, the clarity that you can get. Not to say that those other color theories don't have merit or use, but we'll talk more about that later. Mixing 2 primary colors together will give you a secondary color. So magenta and yellow making red, magenta and cyan making purple, cyan and yellow making green. Those are the secondary colors. Then you can continue to mix secondary colors together, or a secondary color and a primary color together, and have even more different variations. This will create a color wheel if you do it in order, which we will make later. But for now, just keep in mind, the colors you need to start with depend on what you want. If you want bright, clear colors, start with the cyan, magenta, and yellow color theory. Now I'm going to show you the traditional color theory that usually has cad red and ultramarine blue with a color like lemon yellow. These are the traditional red, yellow, blue. They're really bright and they're beautiful on their own, but they don't quite make the same brightness in their mixtures, and I'll show you that. So red and yellow, beautiful, beautiful bright orange. There's just no going wrong with yellow. Yellow mixtures are always going to give you a bright, beautiful color. The problem is when we start mixing purples. Ultramarine blue is just such a heavy blue with this dark cherry red, and it makes a beautiful purple if what you're looking for is more of a muted, muddy purple. So there is nothing wrong with this purple, except for when you're starting out and you're really trying to get that bright, beautiful, clear purple. It can be frustrating. And you can tell in comparison to the brighter primaries on the top that all of these mixtures are just a little bit darker and duller, which again is totally fine. But if you're looking for those bright mixtures, start with the brighter primary colors of cyan, magenta, and yellow. But if you like the muddy colors, stick with the classics. Again, the tip is choose your primaries carefully because they will completely affect the entire course of your color mixing. Before we get to the next tips, we need to create a color wheel to help us see why those next tips are important. But don't let color wheels confuse you or overwhelm you. They're pretty simple. Start with your primaries in 3 points of a triangle. Mix 2 primaries together to get the center color. So yellow and magenta making red at an equal amount right in the middle. Then take red that you've just mixed and mix a little bit of yellow to get the one that leans closer to yellow, and then mix a little bit more magenta to that red to get a color that leans closer to magenta. And that's how you get all of the color mixtures between yellow and magenta. And then you're going to do that same thing between all of the colors. Cyan and magenta, purple. Add a little bit more magenta to that purple, and then put it in the spot that leans closer to magenta. Add a little bit more cyan to that mixture, and then you add it to the spot where it leans a little bit more cyan. It's a beautiful blue. Same thing on the other side. We're going to make sure that any color that is closest to yellow is going to be very light and has more yellow. middle mixture of an equal amount of color in the middle, and then it's going to lean blue the closer we get to cyan. So that's really the entire color wheel. We can do it very easily, especially on this circular plate that we have, so that we don't get anything mixed together. Just keep it simple. I like to draw lines so that I can know which two colors are exactly opposite each other on the color wheel. That's how I set up my color wheel. But our next tip number 2, is think about analogous colors. Analogous colors are 3 to 4 colors on the color wheel that are right next to each other. And they typically blend together really well. So, for example, anything between yellow and magenta, I can easily mix together in different forms, in different variations, in different concentrations, and they all look good together. Well, why would I even need to know that? Well, if I'm painting a cherry, I can start with yellow, I can have some orange colors, I can have some magenta and some red, all within that cherry while it's still wet, and it blends together and it looks good. It looks good, it looks on purpose. These are colors that can mix well together and play well together as we're painting. Same with if I went between yellow and cyan. I can mix all of these colors together in foliage, in water, deep water, and they will look good. The second you start going across the color wheel, mixing in colors across, that's when you run into trouble when you're trying to get these nice, beautiful mixtures of color. Focus on analogous colors. If you want to get a nice, even mixture when you're painting something and you want it to blend together and you want it to look good and not be muddy, focus on analogous colors, colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. And then the same also goes between magenta and cyan. I can mix all of these colors together in different variations on my palette. I don't have to worry about the amounts or how much of each one. I know it will always look good together. That is the beauty of analogous colors. That's my second tip, because I feel like it takes a lot of the color mixing worry out of it. Focus on analogous colors. You can never, ever go wrong. They will always mix together nicely. All right, and then the third tip is utilize complementary color mixing. Complementary colors are the colors across from each other on the color wheel. And when we were mixing analogous colors, we don't want to cross over the color wheel because we will get muddy colors. Well, sometimes you want muddy colors. Sometimes you need a dirt path or a muddy kind of shadow in the color that you're painting. So if you mix colors opposite, so yellow and purple, green and magenta, blue and orange, you mix them opposite each other, you get those muted, dusty colors that we were getting when we were doing the red, yellow, blue palette. So that's one of the reasons I love cyan, magenta, yellow color theory, is because we get the bright, clear colors, but if we mix complementary colors that are opposite each other, we can also get the muddy variations of those colors without having to add any extra colors to our palette. We really can create dark, moody colors even with just 3 colors. So, colors opposite on the color wheel, complementary, make muddy colors. We can mix all the colors on our color wheel. So I'm using my little ceramic plate as like a color wheel. I can pick up any colors from my color wheel palette and mix them together. And if I do different variations of complementary color mixing, I can get muddy, dark colors. For example, if I am mixing colors together, I notice it's kind of muddy, but it leans purple, and I want a more soft gray. I can add yellow, which is the color's complement, which mutes it. I can add yellow to get it to be a little bit more gray. If I'm mixing and it leans more green, I can add the pinks to the reds to that color because they're opposite on the color wheel, and they will be more muted and more gray. And you can mix all 3 colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, in equal amounts to get black. So anyway, my third tip, utilize complementary colors, because we sometimes do need those moody, dark colors because not everything we're painting is bright, cheery rainbows, right? Complementary colors Those colors will get you those moody colors, and you use those when you're doing shadows, dirt, anything where you want dark, heavier colors. And those are my 3 tips. And I think if you follow those 3 tips, you can take color mixing from complicated to a lot more understandable. So again, to summarize, use the primary colors that are valuable to you for what you want to mix. I love cyan, magenta, and yellow. Second, use analogous colors for any time you want to mix colors that always look good together. And then third, utilize complementary colors when you want to create moodier, darker mixes, because those are also important too when we are color mixing. Again, I hope this was so helpful for you, breaking down the process, making it as simple as we can. Color mixing is so fun. I'm absolutely obsessed with having a limited palette, and I hope you really enjoyed the process of seeing it all come together. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.